Last month, the Biden administration announced that it was easing the decades-old limitations on an official U.S. official contacting Taiwan. Also in April, the administration sent an unofficial delegation to the island, enraging China, which still views Taiwan as its own. Beijing has been increasingly using its military prowess in the South China Sea to warn the world to stop interfering in Taiwan. And here is Ned Price, the spokesperson from the State Department.
The United States maintains the capacity to resist any resort to force or other forms of coercion that would jeopardize the security or the social or economic system of the people on Taiwan.
You can just hear the People's Army and the People's Navy shaking in their boots after that. Let's welcome in now Gordon Chang, author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War and the Coming Collapse of China. Also with us, the president for the Center of Security Policy, a former National Security Chief of Staff under the Trump administration, Fred Fleitz. Gordon, Fred, great to see you both.
Good to be here.
Good to see you, John.
All right, so this New York Times op-ed piece was a little concerning. I mean, there's a lot on the foreign stage for the Biden administration and the foreign policy team to be concerned about. But Gordon, first to you on this one, and Fred, jump in there when Gordon wraps up. Do you see this like this article does, that this is really putting the world at risk of a world war, what the Biden administration is doing in Taiwan?
Well, the Biden policy on Taiwan, I think, is actually quite good, could be better. But Peter Beinart, who wrote that piece in the New York Times, doesn't understand deterrence, and he certainly doesn't understand China's motivations. You know, Peter Beinart points out something that's true, that in war games, the U.S. always loses when it comes to Taiwan. But that doesn't mean we can't deter Taiwan, because Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, his #1 foreign policy goal is the maintenance of Communist Party rule. And if he feels that there would be unacceptably high casualties, he's not going to attack Taiwan. But we need a clear declaration from the administration saying that we will defend Taiwan. In other words, we need to ditch our policy of strategic ambiguity, which once worked, but really won't work now in this very different environment in Beijing.
Fred, what do you think?
Well, this op-ed was written by Peter Beinart, a far-left writer who's mostly known for his vicious attacks on the state of Israel, so I don't find him credible. What I found interesting about this op-ed is that he's reflecting the views of the left, which would like to write Taiwan off. I don't agree that the small steps that Biden has taken to normalize relations with Taiwan is really going to antagonize China to attack. But if you read this op-ed carefully, it's pretty clear that the left doesn't want to defend Taiwan. They don't care if China invades it. Now, some of that radical ideology is going to be affecting this administration, and I think Gordon is right. Joe Biden has to counter that by making a strong statement that we will defend Taiwan and get rid of the ambiguity, which worked for a while in the past. But China's counting on that ambiguity and the weakness of Biden, possibly to find an opportunity to invade, and Biden needs to close that door.
Well, the fecklessness of the Biden foreign policy here is what I think makes this article interesting to me. To your guys' point, yes, this guy comes from a far-left perspective here. Interesting to hear your take on it, Fred, because that sounds, accurate, that the left doesn't care about Taiwan. They don't care about the ever-present march of communism across the globe here. But one thing, Gordon, that I think might be concerning to the Chinese, or at least the way they see this, is that, they don't know what the Biden foreign policy team is going to do. It doesn't have kind of a strong moral center. They say one thing, but then they have all this pressure from the other part of their party. And so how are the Chinese supposed to interpret this?
Yes, and that's really the problem. When the U.S. has been ambiguous in the past, in other areas, it hasn't worked. So, for instance, we could have stopped the Korean War before it started by drawing our Western defense perimeter across the 38th parallel. But we didn't do that. We could have prevented the Gulf War by telling Saddam Hussein that we would defend Kuwait. We didn't do that, and he invaded Kuwait. So these are really just lessons from the past. And clearly, we need to step up and say this, because if we say this, we can avoid a conflict. If we don't say it, as Fred talked about, we could very well end up in a war.
Right. And G knows this, Fred. This is the same foreign policy team, basically, that drew red lines in Syria and didn't follow up on it. And that's the message. I mean, that's the problem here. China can listen to these, bellicose pronouncements from Tony Blinken, but they don't buy them.
That's right. Look, Biden wants business as usual. He keeps calling China a competitor. China is an adversary at best, maybe an enemy. Gordon and I could debate that. France is a competitor. You know, in a competition, you follow the rules. You're trying to get ahead with a fellow player. The Chinese want to destroy us. They want to dominate the world. And when we make climate change our top priority, and when the president gives a speech to Congress, he doesn't mention the Uyghurs, he doesn't mention genocide, and he gives such very soft criticism of the Chinese regime, he may be giving them a green light to think they could get away with invading Taiwan. And I'm very worried about that.
Yeah. We were talking with Neil Ferguson earlier, guys. He's got a great new piece up on the UK Spectator about the West emulating what China's doing and the dangers of that. I encourage everybody to read that. Also check up with Fred and Gordon on Twitter as well. Thanks, guys. Always great to talk to you.
Good to be here.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.